Hello there, how are you doing? So, what is psychic burnout? Well, I can only explain to you what happened to me last October, late October it was 2023, when I hit a point where it felt like I couldn't go on. Now, it was triggered, for want of a better word, by a rather silly incident which involved two customers of mine who knew each other and were in conflict with each other, and one of whom got in touch with me through social media and, to all intents and purposes was trying to involve me. Now, I know that her intentions were not malicious. I understand that. But it wasn't a great thing to do, especially as it happened on my partner's birthday and I'd taken the day off and, we'd been having such a lovely day. Now, normally I would shrug this stuff off. I'd be annoyed about it. Oh, yes, I'd be annoyed about it. But I'd shrug it off and move on. When you work in my line of work, I've been a professional intuitive consultant for 30 years and worked with people all over the world. When you're involved in that line of work and when you work online, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. I've been dragged over the coals on psychic forums, on social media, it's the nature of the beast. However, this crack, as I call it, was coming anyway, and it was only going to be a matter of time. When I look back, it was only a matter of time. And what do I put that burnout down to? Well, mostly down to the fact that I had spent almost 30 years working with people in a psychic capacity on an almost daily basis, one way or another. And all the bubbles of light, I'm sorry to, the spiritual purists out there who will say, well, you should have put a bubble of light around yourself. I'm sorry. It depends on how deeply you are engaging with somebody else psychically. If you're reading superficially, if you're one of those who basically it just becomes about a chat or tea and sympathy, then you're not going to experience anywhere near as much psychic burnout over time. But when you engage a lot more deeply with other people's energy fields and you're going into their inner world, and let's face it, our inner worlds for all of us is going to be a very, very cluttered place. A bubble of light is not going to cut it. And one of the things that I hadn't done throughout that time was I hadn't taken good care of myself and my own energy field. And I recognized this. And so this little incident occurred. I found myself not just shrugging it off and moving on. I found myself brooding over it. And then within a very, very short space of time, I also developed a really nasty virus, which quite a few other people had. And I kind of just went down like a sack of potatoes. And I can only tell you that it was a pretty dark place to be in. It was an awful place to be in because I lost the will to continue in the same old way. I couldn't face the idea of continuing with psychic work in any way, shape or form. The thought of it made me physically sick. But you see, something else you will need to understand in this story is that the world is changing and increasingly people have been coming to me, and I'm sure to other readers as well, with increasingly dark energy and increasingly dark questions and subjects. Not everybody. So, for example, I have been asked, when is my addicted husband going to die to put him out of his misery? Now, actually what I thought when I read that question was, what you really mean deep down inside, I think, is when is my addicted husband going to die and kind of put me out of my misery? And I don't blame her at all. No, I do not blame her. And people will, That's a terrible thing to say. It isn't a terrible thing to say. If you've had first-hand experience with people with alcohol issues, if you've had first-hand experience with people with severe depression over a long period of time, you will know how much that can wear you down till you lose sight of everything. So that was just one example of a question. Another question is, when is my daughter, who has been self-harming to such a degree that she's needed surgery, she's needed stitches, when is she going to get better? Now, in order to answer these questions, you have to, if you're going to approach these questions, you have to tune in to the person in question, to their energy field. And so, especially since the pandemic, people have been, as I say, coming with darker and darker issues. It's the nature of the beast. It's the way of the world. And you having a strong sense of duty and responsibility, you try your best to help the customers that come to you. Okay, they're paying you, but you try your best to help them. And then in the end, it almost becomes like you're duty bound to fix people in one fell swoop. Now, something else I'll explain. I spent 25 years giving face-to-face consultations, which I retired from in 2019. And I retired from telephone consultations in 2020. And since then, I have only been working online. I also worked online as well at the time, but I now only work via my website because I'd reached a point there where I couldn't do that anymore. But anyway, post-pandemic, people are in a much darker place than they were before. And I'm going to make another video on this topic of people using psychic services as psychotherapy. But it's you can spend months, years even in psychotherapy, but then it kind of comes down to the psychic in question to kind of fix those problems or come up with solutions in one session. And then you get into this weird place of feeling that you're duty bound to try and fix those people. And I had so many aha moments in the last, November, December, January, February, right? In the last 3.5 months, I've had so many aha moments. What I did decide to do was to start counselling, having counselling for myself. And because I believe this is true, that professional counsellors are obliged to have counselling periodically. Now, going back to my messed up energy field, I was lying in bed one day, this would have been November. I'd hit this brick wall, I had this virus, there'd been 1 or 2 other upsets going on in life around, and I remember lying in bed and I've never felt so joyless in my life and so stuck and so dark. And I thought, I cannot go on like this. I don't want to go. This is awful. Anyway, I really got myself to sit and have a really good look at my own energy field. And it was a mess. It was a complete mess. Science teaches us that when 2 particles come together and pull away from each other, they each leave something of themselves behind and they each take something away. And so for me, I have tuned into literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And without, as I already said, probably taking better care of myself and attempting things that were beyond me. So I went through what they call the dark night of the soul, and I decided to start having counselling. And it's not a case of, digging deep to who did what to whom. It's not like that for me. It was like getting a hold of the end of a piece of string and pulling it to see what was on the end of it. And I picked a guy who I thought I could relate to, quite a sporty guy, very into outdoor pursuits, bit bohemian in appearance, and we have some great, I have a weekly session on via the phone, and we have some great chats, but I can tell you, I have had so many aha moments in that since I started. It's been quite illuminating. And I had quite a few aha moments about my work and the way my role in it and what I expected of myself. And I realised I really, really had to make some serious changes if I was going to continue. Now, bear in mind that this has been my income, and I'm 66 now. To suddenly step out of something when you've been engaged in it for 30 years, well, what do I do? How do I go forward from this point? And then I thought about some of my, loyal long-term customers who, they understand the service. They understand the way I work. It suits them and they come back periodically. So I had a good think about it, and I decided that if I was going to go forwards, I couldn't work in the same old way. So I had to start refunding some people's payments. I had to say to them very respectfully, look, I'm sorry, I don't want to engage in this subject. I don't have it in me anymore to be delving into that darkness. And I would recommend people to go and seek out professional help. They might need a professional healthcare worker. Sorry, I forgot to put my phone on silent. They might need a doctor. They might need long-term therapy. Sometimes they just need to change their attitude. That is true of all of us, isn't it? But I'd say, look, I can't do this. It is beyond me. And more than that, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it anymore. Now, throughout the years, I've allowed my business to grow in this way. And so I suppose, in the end, you become a kind of a counsellor, a kind of a therapist. Because, I understand that if we do A in life, A happens. If we do B, B happens. It isn't just a case of, let's see what's going to happen in your future. Because it's not that simplistic. It's not that simple. So I've been on a journey of self-reclamation. And I feel as if I'm a completely different person than I was even in October. And I just started getting myself kind of into a different mindset when at the very end of January, one of our beloved cats, the biggest, strongest, most beautiful boy you can imagine, suddenly out of the blue became ill. It was a very traumatic week, and it ended up with him having to be put to sleep. And it was like, wow, we were and still are devastated. And so in a way, I kind of had to start again. There were a lot of questions in my mind following that. So it's been quite a journey. But the psychic burnout is something that I recognise very, very much indeed. And there's not an awful lot of readers are still working 30 years down the line. A lot of them have thrown in the towel before then because they find it too much. So, but times have changed, situations have changed, people have changed. The problems that people are facing are getting bigger and darker. And so I have decided to still continue in a way with this work, but there's no way that I'm working anywhere near as much as I was doing. I can't do it. I don't have it within me anymore. And I'm certainly not going to be covering subjects that really, are the domain of a professional healthcare worker or a psychiatrist. And I'm not engaging with people's, I'm going to swear now, with people's shitty attitude. And you will find that the people who can have the shittiest attitude are women when it's anything to do with their love life. Now, I have a lot of very lovely customers, but I'm sorry, There are people out there in this world who, if they don't hear what they want to hear, and they've been told that thing by 10 other readers because they are obsessive about having psychic readings, and I've already long ago made a video on that subject. I'm going to make another one. So we have to set our boundaries in place, and my boundaries had become very, very, very blurred. So I suppose it all comes down to, a video I'm going to make actually is, do we expect too much of our psychic? That is one. Because sometimes people do. They expect way too much, and they're trying to get reassurance. They're trying to receive therapy. They're hoping that somehow or other this person can transform their future, as if this psychic, this reader, is actually responsible for the way that their future unfolds. And of course that isn't true. And so we can end up biting off more than we can chew. But that's our fault. Those of us who do that, that is our fault. And so renewed boundaries are in place. And I'm going to see how it goes, how we go forwards. And I don't know at this stage. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, yeah? Anyway, if you enjoy this subject, if you want to hear more, if you like the way in which I work, then please like and subscribe. It would really, really help me, because it's really hard to get these channels off the ground. So if you're interested in hearing more, please like and subscribe. Okay? Take care. Bye.